So welcome everyone. We're going to get started, and this is our global market introductions to help our global members hear directly from the NAR Global Ambassador Leadership. We are really fortunate to have Mark Kitabayashi, who is the NAR Global Ambassador to Japan and Mongolia, joining us today. I'm excited to make some introductions this morning. Our goal here really is to get acquainted, network globally, and build some resources, learning from experts in the field. And Mark is one of those. Mark, I'm excited to make some quick introductions this morning. So you can meet some of our ABoR global members. I will tell you we have 5 members that are part of a global advisory group. That is Bill Boyd, Goulet Bozdag, Bob Kinney, Charles Clay, and Jeffrey Outlaw. And Jeffrey actually represents our commercial side, so we always try and have a commercial component within that advisory group that really drives the strategy and vision of where we're going to go and helps build our business plan year over year. We also have what we call ABoR Global Ambassador Group. That represents 25 different countries, regions, or strategic partners here locally, such as ARIA, AREP, or NAREP. And that global ambassador, we kind of joke, is that's a committee, but way better because we don't have that same committee structure here in Austin. Let's see, I just have another couple of people coming in. So everyone, I would like to introduce you to Mark today. Mark is a realtor with Windermere Brokers in Washington State since 2000. He is actively involved with the REALTORS Association at all levels, so local, state, and national. He was the president of the Thurston County REALTORS, their local association, in 2006 and in 2010. He was the, sorry, I'm letting somebody else in here. He was the Washington State Association president in 2013 and the National Association. He was the 2019 regional vice president for Region 12. He has also been on the board of directors since 2011 and is involved in the Global Business Alliance division since 2006, so long time efforts there. In 2017, he was part of a larger leadership team as a committee liaison to all of the global businesses, so we do want to hear about that. He's involved in ARIA for the past 13 years as a founding member of the Greater Seattle chapter and a past national board member, and currently serving on the ARIA National Advisory Board. He does teach CE in the Washington State and does NAR designation classes such as Code of Ethics, CIPS, At Home with Diversity throughout the whole state and Western region, as well as in Asia. He has extensive international marketing, research and development, and sales experience for over 25 years, which adds to this extra special dimension to his expertise. So welcome, Mark. I'm going to hand it over to you, and I know you have a slide deck to show and share with us today.
Sure. I think, is everybody able to see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quickly run through slides, and I gave you a packet for the country information for each Japan and Mongolia, and I'm going to go through it basically. Then then we could do the Q&As. I think that's more fun part of it, and everybody could unmute themselves and we could have a conversation. And I'm here as long as you want. I know it's an hour session, but I know we'll see where it goes. So here we go. So, and if you have any questions, I mean, let me run through the slides, then you could ask questions, kind of drop down the questions that you might have for the country or for the NAR or whatever it might be. And already that you see my bio, but one of the things that, I want to concentrate on the global part and what we do a little bit different for Japan as well. And towards the end, you see the NAR PLGA team. And what it is for Japan, we do a little bit different. As soon as we become we used to call PO, it's a president's liaison, now it's called global ambassador. And what we do is we usually find the replacement once we get on. So we work as a team throughout so that there's be smooth transition, especially when you're dealing with a country in Asia. We'll talk a little bit, but it's a little bit different than maybe some of the other parts of it because it takes a little bit longer to build a relationship. So it's very difficult if the global ambassador changes here and there, but usually the global ambassador right now is about 4-year term. And I'm heading into my 5th year because there was a transition from going from President's Liaison to Global Ambassador. President's Liaison back in the days, we used to have basically President Liaison for each country. And we had it over, let's say, at that time we had about 70 countries. Now we have over 80 countries and over 100 associations. But they changed around. They kind of checked the system, and they kept about 25 of us who handles the rest of the world with multiple countries. And I happen to handle Japan and Mongolia. And being a committee liaison means every year NAR president appoints somebody to kind of look over parts of the association. And 2017, under President Bill Brown out of California, I was in charge. He tasked me to look after the global businesses. So which consists of at that time the Global Alliance business and about four to five committees under the global umbrella that we have. And right now, currently, I'm serving to NAR to GEA, we call it now. He's global ambassador to Mongolia and Japan as well. So before we get into the countries, I just want to give you a quick tip. This might be repetitious from some other learnings that you have done and so forth, but I kind of want to go through it. And I kind of put it in a couple of things that's important on a global business trip. If it's a local here, and you can use this for any local businesses as well, because I always believe the global is local. Your global business starts locally, usually. And here's the one thing that it happens is, one thing that you want to do is, we'll go a little bit into it, understand the high and low context on the culture. And if you understand this, this is going to help you 100% on how you deal with your potential client, no matter what part of the world they come from, whether you meet them in the global arena or even at the locally, and understanding the culture really help. And I think you really want to, once you get into it, I think everybody's good on it. You cannot be a expert on everything, as you know, just like any other, like a local businesses here. So commercial, residential, be an expert. And one thing that you always want to keep in back of your mind is the rest of the world knows the word MLS. They want to have MLS, but other than Canada and US are the only two countries that has basically a full-blown countrywide MLS. Countrywide meaning that almost every practitioner uses MLS. So just remember that in the background whenever you talk with your partners in Japan or wherever that globally might be. And one thing they don't want to do is, just because you took a CIPS class or whatever it might be, don't pretend that you know their culture. Ask questions. It is always okay to ask questions. Just like we should be asking, we ask our customer a question, how should we call them? And those are the business etiquette that you do, even especially in a foreign country, foreign business, you're doing CIP. On the global business, it's always good to address your client Mr. or Ms. until they tell you otherwise. So that should be a good business tip just for locally here to your client as well. And at the end of the day, when you're in a residential market, home ownership it's a global dream. It's not just an American dream, it's a global dream. And when you're going through high and low context culture, it's very important. The places that we're talking in Asia it's a high context culture. It's a formality is very important. Face-saving communication is very important. Relationship and the slower pace needed to develop them, and we'll go into a little bit. And lower context culture, which is us, is informality, results is everything. Fast pace, punctuality, direct communication is important. And in Japan, but one thing that, even though it's not mentioned here, punctuality is a very important for Asian culture as well, just as well as here. And I'll go into the punctuality on the fun story about Japan as well. And high context culture, conduct business through the development of the relationship. Relationship is number one. And we always talk about, in Asian culture, what is more important, honesty or loyalty? And usually in most of the high context culture, loyalty is more important than actual honesty is. So a good example would be like the, I'm going relating to the TV, like the Italian mafias. Loyalty to your family is more important than actual honesty. So that's very similar in Asian culture as well. And nonverbal communication is very important, more so than the low context culture. And contracts are based on relationships. And it's not about what's on the paper, it's about the relationship that you have. And time is fluid, and schedules tend to be very flexible, but punctuality is still there. So these are the things that's on, I kind of put a little bit of a flag next to it on some of the high context culture. It seems like a lot of the South America and some of the, Europe seems like a low context culture like us, but actually high context culture. And what's the big difference in high context culture and low context cultures? Actually, the high context culture has a very social distancing until you get to know them. Then it becomes a very huggy, kissy, so to speak. So you tend to know that like South Americans and the South Europeans seems like a low context, and they're very, affectionate. But until you get to know them, to be part of the family or the group, it's actually a very high context social distancing culture. So like in this COVID-19 situation, Asia's social distancing is not as hard as, rather than being too crowded, social distancing between the business partner is pretty easy, because in Japan, bowing is the norm. A handshake is not the norm as well. So you're bowing, so there's always some social distancing there as well. So let me, you have the detail, but I just want to go through quick facts about Japan. Japan is about 126 million, and it's a very aging population. They say by 2050, and over 50% of the population is going to be over probably 55, 56 years old. So that means a very aging population, and it is a decreasing population. So that's when you look at a housing market, decreasing and aging population brings a little bit of obstacle and where the future needs to be. And far as a foreign ownership of the property is concerned, Japan has absolutely no restriction. It's the same tax-wise or anything. There's not an exit tax like a FERPTA like here. There's absolutely no restriction. So it might be one of the easiest country to own a property in the rest of the world. And licensing, yes, licensing is required, and it is a national license, and it's annually tested. And believe it or not, passing rate is about 16%. And once you have a license, you're able to have a unlicensed assistant up to 5 person under you that they can perform almost everything in the real estate as a licensee can. So it's very difficult to say license. So a lot of the mom and pop stores, maybe the one person has a license and you have 5, 6 people working under them that's performing almost the same thing that you do. And only thing the unlicensed assistant cannot do is called explaining the important matters. What it is there's a set documents as a licensee that needs to explain to the buyer and seller how the transaction is going. Basically, it's like a part of, here it's like a part of the purchase and sales agreement, but what is important, it's a law of agency type of things that you have to explain. Right now on purchases, this one still have to be done face to face. Probably that's the biggest obstacle that's have on a purchasing let's say an investment property in Japan for a small investor who just doesn't have means to it. You might have to go to Japan to listen to this person telling you what's important in the transaction, and that's still required right now currently with a face-to-face meeting. And as NAR, we have a 5 cooperating association and ambassador associations in Seattle King County for NAR. And one of the things that's here on the far as the real estate transaction is concerned, it's a 1.5 million a year, roughly, and 70% of the transaction is about new construction. And very popular place for them to invest is the West Coast. And Texas, especially around Dallas area, is becoming very popular. And Ohio is one of the popular places for a lot of the single family. Of course, the large corporation invest into New York and large city that you could think of. But we'll talk about a little bit about even Dallas and even Ohio. Why Dallas and Ohio? And you might know already, but we'll talk about it a little bit. And in Japan, when we look at franchises, number one franchise in Japan is Century 21 with about 1,000 offices right now. And number two is called House View. That's a Japanese company that's have about 700 offices. And number three is ERA, which is called Lixo Realty. Why Lixo Realty? Why I mentioned Lixo is the bathroom ceramic manufacturer. And whether you knew or not, Lixo actually owns the American standard, that one makes the toilet and sinks and things like that. They actually own the American standards as well. So that's a quick fact about Japan. And when we talk about Japan, we talk about the formality and punctuality. As you know, in Asia, most of you know, and if you're not, we could go over is, business cards are a very important part. A business card is considered as a part of you, so you have to respect, giving and receiving business card as well. In Japan, it's very structured, so even the seating arrangements are usually made, so you are able to tell who's in the hierarchy when they sit. So every time we have meeting in Japan, there's usually seating chart, or if it's not, there's unwritten rules on where you need to sit and so forth. One thing that you do is easy is you as a guest will usually sit far away from the door as well. And usually the most important person sits in the middle, and he goes to left to right to the ranks that is. So you kind of know who's the top. And one thing about punctuality in Japan is a little bit different, because in the United States, when you have let's say appointment about 10 a.m., you show up about, the best norm would be show up maybe 5 minutes before, and you announce yourself and say that I'm here for 10 o'clock appointment. In Japan, it's totally different. You do not even announce yourself till 10 a.m. So a lot of times, right after lunch or on the hour, there are a lot of people waiting in the elevator hall because they don't even walk into the office till 10 a.m. So that's how punctual they are. So, we're there, when you go to a meeting in Japan, you stay at the elevator hall, say, oh, it's still 9:59, so we got a minute. We'll just wait a minute, then when you walk in. So those are the things. It's a very different in Japan than maybe any other culture. So that's a quick fact about Japan. And we'll talk, you're familiar with the Texas inbound, but we'll talk a little bit about the hotspots in US for a lot of the investment is concerned. So here's Mongolia. Mongolia is population 3.08 million, and 1.5 million, almost a half of the population lives in the capital city. And the next largest cities are, believe it or not, and most of the cities are less than 100,000. And second largest city is about right around 100,000. So there's a vast difference between the capital city and there. And foreign ownership is no land ownership. You have basically a land lease that actually gets renewed every 5 years. But right now, there's not a deadline on a land lease. So you are almost like ownership. And you're not able to sell and buy like anything else. You need basically somebody in Mongolia needs to be acting not as a realtor, but actually as a seller and a buyer in order to do a transaction. So that's easy way. And so attorney gets involved a lot of times. There's no licensing. And so it's very difficult to figure out who actually really practices in Mongolia. And we think there's about 1,500 real estate agents and 1,000 of them in the capital city, very obvious. And there's no MLS. And I've been working with them, with Mongolia government, talking about licensing even MLS. And MLS is brought by our strategic partner, REAM, a Real Estate Academy of Mongolia. And they have right now about 100 members. And there's about 100,000 transactions a year. but we're not quite sure because there's no data. And a popular destination is the West Coast. And Mongolia is new to a Western world. And for those of you, Mongolia is landlocked countries in the middle of Asia. And also the #1 franchise company in Mongolia is RE/MAX agent. And most of them is in the capital city. Believe it or not, out of 1,000 real estate agents that we think there are, RE/MAX agents, about 800 agents are RE/MAX agent. So whenever I go over there and RE/MAX agent goes, I want an MLS, I want an MLS. And I always kind of ask the question, why do you want MLS as a RE/MAX? You know, when you have a dominant market in, you know, capital city of Ulaanbaatar, and you want to share your information with other things. You know, they always talk about, they never thought about that way. I mean, they're dominating right now. So, but REAM is working to see, and countries still working to see MLS even licensing. And right now, they have approved a registering of the real estate offices. So we'll see how that works. And I was going to go to June and talk to the government official, of course. With the COVID, I'm not able to do. And right now with the COVID-19, Mongolia is no in and out of the Mongolia. And I know one of the Mongolia, even if you're a citizen, you kind of have to wait. No traveling in and out. But with that said, Mongolia, I think right now, let me get the number. I think Mongolia, as of yesterday, has 42 confirmed case entire country and 0 death and COVID is concerned. And Japan is looking about 800 deaths and about right now it's about 16,000 person who's 16,000 per infected with a COVID-19. In Japan, on the COVID-19, Japanese government is not make an order of the law to stay home like some of us that we could do in our country, because Japanese government was taken away with power to basically order a citizen to do certain things right after the World War II, when after that we lose the war, when the new constitution came in with help of the United States to rebuild the country, we made a constitution saying the government are not able to order and make a law that's prohibit people from basically lockdown is not able to do that. So in Japan, it's highly recommended is a word that they use, and the government urges people to stay home and so forth. But some of the areas are starting to ease up a little bit. But one thing that's easy for Japan Asian culture is we're used to wearing masks. We wear masks all the time during the flu seasons or whenever you are sick, or even the allergy seasons and so forth. So wearing mask is easy, but seems like in the United States, half of our countries are having very tough time even wearing the mask out and about. But at least for Mongolia, I just wanted to show you this quick 2-minute video that Reem created, and hopefully it goes through with the video. And it's a 2-minute video explaining the country, because Japan, there's so many videos, but Mongolia is one of those unknown countries for a lot of us. Mongolia is one of the countries I've never been till I got involved in NAR. So let's watch this 2-minute video.
Mongolia is truly one of the world's last undiscovered destination and safest country. We have land where you can experience open wide space, cobalt blue sky, forest, deserts, and crystal clear river and lakes. We have traditional hospitality nomads. Mongolia is 19th largest country in the world. Our national currency is called Tugrik, in dollar equal to 2,650 Tugrik.
A real estate of typical Mongolian family is traditional housing called ABoR. The real estate market has been expanded as many people are interested living in apartments and houses in capital Ulaanbaatar city. The average property price for 1-bedroom flat is $60,000.
Currently, Mongolia doesn't have real estate agency law, therefore not licensing the real estate brokers and real estate salespersons. International franchise and national independent real estate companies, brokers and salespersons are enrolled in real estate intensive and short-term training.
The Real Estate Academy of Mongolia is an official and cooperating association of National Association of Realtors. Our academy has 101 members.
There is no homeowner restriction in Mongolia. Even foreign citizens can buy and own a home in Mongolia.
All right. So any questions? So I'm gonna, you can unmute yourself.
So Mark, since we're right on Mongolia, they've been doing a lot of building and infrastructure there. Do you have any news or insights on what's been going on, going into parts of their country that they had not really developed in the past?
Yeah, right now it's amazingly is Mongolia's main economy is they still is a lot of coal as a coal mine, and also whether you knew or not, most of the most popular things, especially for a lot of people, fashion, but cashmere is one of the largest industry that they have in Mongolia. But other than the capital city, nothing really has changed in the last 5-6 years. And right now, real estate is kind of stalemate in Mongolia, because what it is, Mongolia has a lot of the investment that's coming from China and Russia. And right now, Mongolia is struggling right now in the real estate market because their industry is not growing as much. And a lot of even the cashmere industry doesn't go straight from Mongolia to anywhere else. Most of the cashmeres are bought by Chinese, and they develop, and they even call it as a Chinese cashmere, even though. So most insulting things that you could say to Mongolian is that don't tell them they're Chinese. That's the most important. I mean, it seems they might look same, they might come from it, but telling them you're Chinese is probably the most insulting things you could say in Mongolia. But Mongolia is a struggling economy, but it's one of the undeveloped front in the Asia that, it's probably the most undeveloped in the Asia that I know of.
Okay. With all of that you've done, you've had a lot of extensive experience, even getting into real estate. What are the things that have stood out for you? I think you mentioned you had a story about working in Japan and there. What can you share with us on that front?
One of the things that, as far as doing business is concerned, and I'm going to be blunt and I'm pretty straightforward. So if I offended anybody, I'm sorry. And you could talk to Christine later and never have Mark again. But one of the things that I think we could do, especially in Asia, definitely, and this is just being fact, and I could even give you an example, is especially like in Japan and Mongolia, being a white Caucasian helps you. And it does. And you could do anything wrong and you'll be fine. They'll look at you as you're, especially in Japan, because after the war situation, but sometimes it might be very difficult. And one thing that not more so in Mongolia, but in Japan, women in real estate is going to be very tough. Because when I said we have a 5 cooperating association, you look at their national association, you look at board members of a 5 association, there is absolutely 0 female on the board, 0.
Okay.
So that's going to be tough. So the good story about it is some of you might know are Margot Willis, who was the Women's Council president a couple of years ago, and she was Realtor Party leader last year. She's African American, and she was a Washington Realtor president 3 years ago when we go to Japan every year as a Washington Realtor. So I told Margot before we go, and I said, in a meeting, you might be uncomfortable because number one, you're a woman leader. And number two, you're a minority as an African American. In Japan, sorry to say it, but as a, let's say, a minority, other than a white person, they look at it as more of a labor person. There's a lot of labor person that comes from Asia and Africa to work in Japan to do a lot of blue collar work or manual labor type of things. So when Margot went to Japan, not because they're disrespectful towards her, but they didn't know how to treat woman leader or African American leader. So Margot felt uncomfortable a little bit in some of the meetings. So just a heads up, if you're a minority, a non-white person, you might feel uncomfortable. And I'm okay, but even the worst is like a Japanese American who looks Japanese but not able to understand Japanese, or or doesn't understand the Japanese culture, be the worst person. Luckily, I'm firstborn Japanese, and I worked in Japan as an adult as well, so I understand the culture. I mean, for 15 years, I worked within the Japanese culture, so I'm okay. And my Japanese really, according to people, I'm very fluent in business Japanese and everything else. So, but for Japan, but at the end of the day, we're all human, and they want to practice English. And Mongolia is one of those countries that, as you look at it, a lot of people, I mean, there are a lot of Mongolians who actually study within Mongolia English, and they actually speak really well. And some of them have never gone outside of Mongolia, because when I taught a CIPS class last 2 years ago in Mongolia, and we have about 25 students. Out of that, half of them spoke English. And out of that, only 2 were basically foreign educated, or even gone outside of it. So, it's a little bit different than Mongolia. Mongolia wants to learn a lot. But one thing that you have to understand, like Mongolia, is that their average salary is $300 a month. So even as taking a CIPS class for $700 for the entire course is a lot of money. Realtors usually make about normal realtor makes about $400 a month, and they say the top selling realtor makes about $600 a month.
Okay.
So there's a lot of difference on pricing. Those I think it's always good to understand the scale of economy. And one thing that I usually do is whatever the country I go, I usually go into McDonald's. Why I go into McDonald's? Not because I miss the American hamburgers, but compare the price of Big Mac. Big Mac is on every single menu except for India. Of course, India does not eat beef, so there's no Big Mac. And what I found out was when I went to Mongolia story as well, is because Mongolia is very fascinating to me. Japan's been in the devil. Mongolia, there was no McDonald's, no Starbucks, but there was a lot of Kentucky Fried Chicken and all other Tully's and others. And I asked them why. So they had they had some conflict with the government. So government did not allow McDonald's to come in, because there's more Wendy's and Burger King, and because I said, well, where's the McDonald's? I always ask them to take me to McDonald's. Say, we don't have one. What do you mean? I saw Burger King, I saw Wendy's, I saw Taco Bell, but there's no McDonald's. Anyway, sorry. Any questions or anything that anybody else?
I'm starting to get a couple of them come in. I know that Susie Kane here, who's a past present liaison with NAR, so she compares Starbucks coffee in Korea to US. Yeah. She also wants to see your end slide again, but I'll make sure, Susie, that we get all that information out to everyone, and Mark's contact information as well. I will ask Mark, how many CIPS designees do we have in Japan and Mongolia? And what is the referral process with them? Are they used to paying out referrals and that kind of thing? Yes.
Number one, in Japan, there's officially 21 CIPSs. It seems small, but actually but funny thing is over 100 people has taken CIPS class, but they never gone to get the CIPS designation. So but classes are very popular. And in Mongolia, there's actually, even I did 23, some of them are still working on it, paying off, because a lot of people paying installment in order to take a class. So officially, when you go into CIPS, there's only probably 2 that's listed there. and they're working through the membership and renewing membership. So in Mongolia, there are about 10 people. But, you know, if you want a direct contact, of course, go reach out to the CIPS people that's on there, and feel free to reach out to me, because, you know, you could say, yeah, I have a client I want to refer to Japan, but, you know, it's like I'm somebody from Japan saying I want to refer a client to US, like it's aware. So, you know, those things, I'll be more than happy to help. Anytime I'll be able to connect many people, or even you visiting these two countries, please reach out to me. Even if you're going for a family trip, you know, go see a real estate, go meet with some of the people. So, you know, you'll be able to write off some of the trips. So, you know, that's the perks that we hear. So.
Who has some questions out there? I know you do there, I can tell.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself, or, you know, it's fine with me.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to do chat box.
And while we're waiting, what motivated you to work at such a high level, at all three levels, all the way up to NAR, and be so involved? This is a volunteer role. What drove you to participate while we're waiting for people to jump on?
So how I got started in NAR leadership kind of trend is, one of the things that happened is, when I was a local association, and just give you the background, is the Washington State, main part of Seattle area, basically MLS is not owned by the Realtors. So it's a total separate organization. So you pay the dues to the Realtors, and you'll also pay the dues to MLS to be access MLS. So when I started in real estate in 2000, I just kind of wanted to know, why am I paying this Realtors due? Back in the days, you know, you don't want to talk about fees, but back in the days, $500 plus. MLS, it was very easy for me to understand why I need to be part of the MLS. You know, you got to have MLS to be on the business. Realtors says, I have no idea what that was. So for me, it's a curiosity started saying, what am I paying this dues for? And I asked a couple of the colleagues in my office back in the days, and one of them was part of the leadership of was involved, says, Mark, why don't you come to the board meeting and some of the committee meetings? So I got invited to a local committee meeting, and that's where I got started. And my leadership, even from proper management, my leadership or my business model is either you move forward or step away. That's the same thing for my Realtors leadership. I keep moving forward till I don't want to do it anymore, and I just step away. So that's my leadership. So that's where I reached to regional vice president, which is the next place that I could go that's higher than what I have not done, would be either treasurer or the president. I absolutely have no desire to go that far within NAR, where it takes, you know, 10, 15 years from now to become one, or even to get to go to the election. So that's how my leadership is.
Laura, did you have a question? She's trying to.
No, I don't. I really like that motto. And there's a Latin motto like that too. But your presentation has been great. I love the slide. You had great information. Thank you.
Yeah, and you have any time, you know, once you get my contact number, please reach out to me for whatever you know, there's no question that's stupid, you know, unless you ask 3 times the same question, then I consider that's stupid. So you get to about twice. So, but anything, you know, because we're all here, we as a realtor family, and you got to use it, utilize it. And with any countries, I mean, you guys are doing, one of the association doing great, inviting many different, you know, global ambassador of NAR that's there. And is Austin, sorry that I didn't do a research, is Austin a ambassador association to any country or not?
Not yet. We're working on that. So we're kind of, as DD Blizzard likes to call us, baby globals. And so we've revamped our program in the last year and a half. And so we're working on some of those things, but we needed to get kind of the local foundation laid out. And so we've been networking a lot with our local chambers, their international programs, our city. We have 2 consulates in our backyard. So we're working on developing some of those things first. And then we feel like we're going to have a stronger ability to go out and partner with some of these associations.
Is Austin sister city?
Austin has a sister cities program that's pretty robust through the city, and we're also partnering with them, trying to see how the association, the Realtors Association, ABoR, can partner better with them.
Sure.
Again, I feel like they're very new. Some people say we've made a lot of strides, and we have, but we're still, we've got a long way to go. There's places like Florida and other markets that, they've been doing this 15, 20 years, and we're just, a couple years into this, and really probably year and a half, 2 years for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, that's
I will
great.
make an introduction. We do have a couple people. Ed Eakin is working. He has applied a couple times to be part of the Global Ambassadors. Tari has also been put her name in the hat. Laura Johansson is interested in doing that and has participated at the national level for CIPS. And Jill Rose, I think you applied at one point. And then also Gule Bozdag, who's our vice chair down there, her picture showing. Some of the girls they hide behind their.
I mean, if you're looking, here's a tip for you guys.
Please.
The Global Ambassador, because Global Ambassador is very hard now because there's only, I think, 22 of us.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's a very small group of people, and things that you want to do is the country. You're gonna have to be right now. Go to the global site and see who's the ambassador for that area, and you're gonna have to be able to manage 2-3 countries, which is. It's been a complaint to us as well, even if they shrunk it. And one country is big enough, and now we have to take care of 2-3. I'm lucky I only have 2. But one thing that is to get to know that person and get to know the countries that you want to be. I mean, that's the key part, is to look at the global ambassador, because they will get replaced. We will get replaced every 4 years or so, and it's coming up.
Sure.
This is a second year of the new program. So unless that person screws it up, you got about another 2-3 years for the big turn, cycle. So just remember that and get to know that country as well. And that's important. So one thing, sorry, that I forgot to mention is, why do you think Dallas and Ohio, Texas and Ohio is becoming popular with Japanese? Why Dallas? 3 years ago, nobody talked about Dallas for Japanese people. People never even thought about investing in Texas as an overall. Why? Anybody?
Toyota, manufacturing.
Yep. Toyota. So, Japanese people are very careful investors. That's individual investors, large, investors. So no one even thought about, Dallas area, but as soon as Toyota moved their headquarters, people say, hey, if it's good enough for Toyota, it must be okay. So everybody wants to buy in Dallas, and so it's very trendy. Ohio is the same thing. It's the auto manufacturers. Wherever the large Japanese corporations are, people are not even involved in that industry, individual investors. So, and Austin's becoming started being noticed by Japanese because of the, you guys are doing a great job on attracting a lot of the high-tech industries. Mm-hmm. As well, and they figure out, hey, Austin's a pretty big city, and it's a nice city.
Yeah, we're driven by the high tech,
Mm-hmm.
the university scene. We have 22 universities and colleges here, with obviously the big one in the backyard is University of Texas with their new medical school. Right. So that's driving a lot of education here, continuing ed, and postgraduate type stuff. Many people call us Silicon Hills as is the precursor to Silicon Valley, but we are seeing where people are coming here and they're not actually using us as a pivot city anymore to move on to the California market. They're coming in and they're staying. Right. And so we have a really big tech background, medical devices, a lot of different industries there that are supporting it. And I know Laura just jumped in here and said that's why San Antonio is really hot right now as well. They've got a lot of different programs, but Texas in general, because we have been consistently the #1 foreign direct investment state in the country. I think we're 18 going on 19 years now. So that just says a lot about our climate for business. And we're seeing people really take notice to that and join us here. Who else had a question? Ed?
Actually, I wanted to say something. Mark, I wanted to tell you that the comment you made about the blue-collared workers, that's exactly how it is in Sweden. And I'm glad you brought that out and talked about it, because it is part of their cultural differences and everything else. So I wanted to let you know I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm always straight and blunt, and I think Japan, I truly still believe Japan is as a industrialized country, Japan is probably one of the most discriminatory country in the world. I truly believe that in a negative sense. I mean, it's very tough for the foreigners, and especially when you're, non-Caucasian foreigners. I mean, it's a very tough.
And that's how it is in Sweden too. I know that because I lived over in Sweden, and I don't know if you can see me, but I don't consider myself that dark, but I was considered,
you're pretty dark for Swedish, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, so I think one of the things that everybody's in a global community, but how I got started in the global business in the real estate business is actually locally. Actually, my largest clientele is not a Japanese. My largest clientele of foreign investors are Vietnamese, and I speak zero word of Vietnamese other than the food that's there. And why I got started is because it's a locally. My first transaction I had in real estate was a Vietnamese client who was referred by title officer, a title rep. She went to a nail salon who was run by Vietnamese, and she went in, as you're doing your nails, they talk to each other, and she wanted to buy a house, and that title rep had absolutely no idea the difference between Japanese, Vietnamese, or whatever. So she says, hey, we have a good new Asian realtor that's started in Maiwa. So that's how I got hooked up with the Vietnamese community. And from there, I grew it domestically in my market, and that went to their relatives in Vietnam and so forth. So it's not, a lot of times it's not the language. It does help me to understand the Asian culture, but not necessarily the language is, of course, always going to help, but that's not, I always say that whenever I teach CIPS classes. That's how I got started. It's not, my clientele is not all Japanese. Japanese actually fourth, because my largest Vietnamese, then Taiwanese, then, believe it or not, Russian, then Japanese.
You're truly world.
Yeah,
You're
I
truly
don't
world.
speak Russian either, so.
There you go. Hey, I see Bill Boyd, our chair of our global advisory, has been able to jump on and has been here. So I've just unmuted you, Bill, if you wanted to say a few words.
Kitabayashi-san, I wanted to just tell you thank you again from our entire group. Insight from, we've got our own insight from our own internal group, but getting your on the ground insight is very interesting. So I think all of us have heard some of the pieces of what you mentioned. When I worked in Singapore, our general manager, we did a lot of business in Japan, and he is Singaporean. And it was interesting to hear him tell stories of his counterparts over there telling us, if you want to do business with me, you need to pay for this bill in Japanese. And Mark didn't know any Japanese at the time, but he got himself into a crash course. So it was just interesting to hear your insight kind of along those same lines. But just wanted to say thanks from our group to you for your time today. Yeah.
And if you want any insight in Japan, Mongolia, even for NAR global size structure, feel free to reach out to me. I'll tell you everything that I can that's not confidential, because I've been in a global area and I've been with the leadership and everything else. So I have pretty good relationship with all the global stuff and so on. So please reach out to me if you need any assistance.
Fantastic.
And you can always use now that you saw me, you could use me as a reference for any committees as well, for on the global side as well. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. Everybody take note of that one.
Yeah, because it's coming up, right? It's extended. If you have not applied for any other committee and you're interested, feel free, you could use me as a reference.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. Well, on that note, we appreciate your time, your insights, all your information. Everybody has your handouts. We look forward to staying in contact with you. I think you will have some of our members take advantage of your references. So look at their shining faces so you know that you've met them at one point. If there's no other questions, thank you guys all for coming.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me and having an opportunity to share.
Yep. Hey, Mark, just at the
Yep.
end, would you mind putting your slide with your contact information back up? That'd be great. Victoria, I'm sorry, did you have something?
No, I just say thank you.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
Perfect. All right, well, I'm going to stay on while you guys log off so that I can save the recording. So I will chat with you guys later.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.